Have you ever faced a problem that seems unsolvable? One of those situations where it feels like you've tried everything, and no matter what you do, nothing seems to work. Well, by the end of this episode, you'll have a fresh way of looking at problems, one that allows you to step back, lift your point of view, and approach challenges with the eyes of an observer, finding solutions that might have been right in front of you all along. Episode 28. How to find the solution to any problem by shifting perspective. Part 1. Half full or half empty. Think of a glass that has 50% water, 50% available space in that glass. Would you describe it as half full or half empty? Would your answer change if you were sitting in an expensive restaurant enjoying a luscious meal? How about if you were stranded in a desert, nobody else for miles around, and this glass was the only form of liquid for hundreds of miles? How would you see this water then? Can you think about a time in your life when you've had some kind of problem? It could be right now or at some point in the past. Were you so immersed in this problem, so close to it, that you couldn't see the woods for the trees? Did it drain you? Or was there something about this situation that you just couldn't see? The well-known example of the definition of an optimist and a pessimist states that the former would describe the glass as half full, whereas the latter would say it's half empty. There is a third perspective, the perspective of the observer. Part 2. Observe the situation. Imagine you're sitting in a car in a traffic jam. As a driver stuck in it, you probably feel frustrated. But if you could somehow rise above this situation and view the jam from a helicopter, you'd notice it's just a temporary hold-up and that the way ahead will soon clear. This is the observer mindset, rising above the problem to see it for what it truly is. The observer states the reality of the situation without judgment or bias and declares, for example, it's a glass with water in it. And it's the perspective of the observer that can often help us when we're in a tight spot. When we are immersed in what we think of as a problem, we feel stuck. The energy of a problem is heavy, dense, and weighs us down. When we observe a problem, on the other hand, we look at it dispassionately and perhaps make notes. We don't get caught up, mingled in the emotions and meanings of the thing. Part 3. Riddle me this. According to etymonline.com, the word problem comes from a late 14th century word for riddle. A problem can feel serious and overwhelming, but a riddle? It's playful. It's a challenge we can solve. When we are presented with a riddle, we are much more open to the possibility of a solution existing. Immediately, the energy is lighter, less dense and heavy, and we can begin to play with the idea of finding a solution. Because there is always a solution to every problem or riddle. More often than not, a shift in perspective allows us to find a solution. The Universal Law of Polarity states that everything has an opposite. Without day, for example, there can be no night. Up cannot exist without down. Until we feel sadness, we won't realize what it is to be happy. If a problem or a riddle exists, then the solution must also exist. We just need to tune in and allow that solution to come to focus. Where there's a challenge, there's also an opportunity. One of the most famous thinkers of recent times, Albert Einstein, said, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." He was aware of the importance of shifting perspective and seeing things from another point of view. When we get out of our own way, shift gear, and untangle ourselves from the situation, everything becomes clearer. We're no longer clouding the situation with our own judgment, fears, and worries, but we're in observer mode, approaching things with a cooler head and an enthusiasm for solving the rhythm. If we think of the word solve, itemonline.com reveals that it comes from the Latin word solvere, meaning to loosen or release. When we can free ourselves from the entanglement of the problem, we can allow ourselves to dance with the possibility of all the opportunities that are waiting to be discovered. Here are 4 ways you can shift your perspective on a situation. 1. Create distance. When you're facing a problem, step back. Imagine it's happening to somebody else. This simple act creates emotional distance, allowing clarity to emerge. 2. Play the riddle game. Turn the problem into a riddle. Write it down in the form of a question. The key is to stay curious rather than frustrated. 3. Apply the law of polarity. Look for the opposite. If you're knee-deep in a problem and feeling stuck, when you ask yourself, what's the opportunity here? What is the opposite situation of what I'm experiencing right now? And what steps can I take to shift into that situation instead? 4. Embrace solutions from different angles. Sometimes the solution isn't where you're looking. Ask somebody else for their view. Or imagine that you're interviewing somebody, an expert in that field, perhaps an imaginary radio broadcast. How might they approach the situation? What would they say? I have conducted many imaginary interviews on my imaginary broadcast program, and every single time I've come up with something I hadn't considered before. Henry Ford said, "If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got." If we keep looking at the problem without changing the way we look at the problem, nothing will change. So, next time you feel stuck, take a step back and become the observer. See what happens when you can turn that problem into a riddle and approach it with curiosity and playfulness. You might be surprised by what you discover. Sign up to my weekly newsletter and receive my free ebook, The Hidden Language of Colour, Change the Way You Look at the World. Visit my website at www.iamjennywilson.com and follow the free ebook link. Or you can check out my YouTube channel, Jenny Wilson's Soul Language. Let's reconnect next time. In the meantime, shift your perspective